The summer of 2025 marked a dark chapter for New York City, a city that had weathered countless storms but was unprepared for the tragedy that would unfold. The city's energy, usually vibrant and relentless, seemed to pause in the heavy heat, as if anticipating the sorrow to come. On a sweltering July afternoon, Shane Devon Tamura, a 32-year-old software engineer, entered a midtown office lobby and opened fire without warning. In a matter of minutes, 4 innocent lives were lost. Another person was gravely wounded, and Tamura himself was dead by his own hand. The chaos and confusion that followed left the city reeling, as first responders rushed to the scene and news of the shooting spread rapidly across the nation. As the city mourned, a painful question surfaced. Could this have been prevented? Grief-stricken families and stunned co-workers gathered at makeshift memorials, searching for answers in the flickering candlelight. The tragedy sent shockwaves through communities far beyond New York, as people everywhere wondered how such violence could erupt in a place so familiar. Tamura's history soon came to light, revealing a troubling pattern. He had been placed on psychiatric holds multiple times and had made repeated threats of suicide. Despite these red flags, he was able to legally purchase firearms and even held a Nevada concealed carry license. The paperwork was all in order, the background checks passed, and the system, as it stood, allowed him to slip through the cracks. Experts pointed to missed intervention points, moments when action could have changed the outcome. Mental health professionals, law enforcement, and lawmakers all faced tough questions about what more could have been done. Each missed opportunity became a painful reminder of the system's limitations and the consequences of inaction. Ironically, just weeks before the shooting, Nevada had passed a new law. This legislation allowed police to confiscate firearms from individuals placed on involuntary mental health holds without waiting for a court order. It was a measure designed to close the very loophole that had allowed Tamura to keep his weapons, but for him, it came too late. Had Tamura's last crisis occurred under this new law, his weapons might have been removed, and lives spared. The law's intent was clear: to act swiftly in moments of crisis, before tragedy could strike. But for the victims and their families, the change was a bitter reminder of what might have been. The tragedy exposed a critical gap in gun laws and ignited a national debate about mental health, gun rights, and public safety. Across the country, citizens, lawmakers, and advocacy groups clashed over how best to balance individual freedoms with the need to protect the vulnerable. Protests erupted, news outlets ran heated debates, and the nation found itself at a crossroads. Shane Tamura's story became the human face of a legal battle that would soon reach the nation's highest court. His actions, and the failures that preceded them, forced the country to confront uncomfortable truths about its laws and its values. The Supreme Court prepared to weigh in, knowing that its decision would shape the future of gun policy and mental health intervention for generations. The case forced America to confront the tension between individual rights and the urgent need to protect the vulnerable. As the flag flew at half-mast and communities gathered in mourning, the nation was left to grapple with the question: how do we honor both freedom and safety in a world where tragedy can strike so suddenly? The story of Shane Tamura remains a stark reminder of the cost of inaction and the ongoing struggle to find answers. Firearm confiscation is a deeply divisive issue, pitting public safety against constitutional rights. While some laws allow gun seizure after a criminal conviction, others, like red flag laws, permit temporary removal based on perceived risk, often before any crime is committed. Supporters see these measures as vital interventions. Critics warn of government overreach and the erosion of due process. The debate is not just about guns, but about liberty, government power, and how best to keep society safe. The Supreme Court's recent decision was not made in isolation. It was shaped by a series of landmark rulings that have redefined the legal landscape around the Second Amendment. Each case has built upon the last, creating a complex web of precedent that guides how justices interpret the Constitution's language on the right to bear arms. In 2022, the Bruen case set a new, far-reaching standard. Gun laws must align with the nation's historical tradition. This meant that any restriction on firearms would now be measured against the practices and beliefs held at the time the Second Amendment was adopted, rather than modern policy arguments or public safety concerns. This ruling upended many modern regulations, calling into question laws that had been on the books for decades. Almost overnight, courts across the country were flooded with legal challenges, as lawyers and advocacy groups sought to test the limits of Bruen's historical test. In 2024, the court's Rahimi decision addressed one of the most contentious issues yet: whether individuals under domestic violence restraining orders could be disarmed. The justices ruled that the government could in fact restrict gun ownership in these cases, affirming that the Second Amendment is not absolute and that public safety can justify certain limits. But the debate didn't end there. The tragic Manhattan shooting and Nevada's newly enacted law, which allowed for the temporary removal of firearms during a mental health crisis, brought the issue to a national boiling point. These events forced lawmakers, courts, and citizens alike to confront the difficult balance between individual rights and community safety. When Nevada's law was challenged in court and ultimately upheld by the state's Supreme Court, the conflict between state authority and constitutional rights became impossible to ignore. The legal battle set the stage for a high-stakes review by the U.S. Supreme Court, with the potential to reshape gun laws nationwide. At the heart of the case was a central, urgent question: can the state seize firearms from someone experiencing a mental health crisis before a court hearing, or does the Constitution require that due process come first? The answer would have profound implications for law enforcement, mental health professionals, and families across the country. As the nation watched and waited, the Supreme Court prepared to issue a decision that would not only resolve the immediate legal conflict, but also define the boundaries of gun control and individual rights for years, perhaps generations, to come. Red flag laws, or extreme risk protection orders, allow courts to temporarily remove firearms from those deemed a danger. Family or police can petition a judge, who may issue a short-term order, often without the subject present, followed by a prompt hearing. If the risk is confirmed, a longer order can be issued. Otherwise, guns are returned. Nevada's law differed. It allowed immediate confiscation during an involuntary mental health hold, with the court hearing to follow. This seize first, review later approach was the controversial element now before the Supreme Court. The question: does this emergency action violate constitutional rights, or is it a necessary tool to prevent tragedy? In a landmark and unanimous decision, the Supreme Court upheld Nevada's law, affirming that police may temporarily confiscate firearms from individuals placed on involuntary mental health holds. This ruling, delivered with rare agreement among all 9 justices, underscores the court's recognition of the urgent need to address public safety concerns when someone is experiencing a severe mental health crisis. The decision clarifies that in these specific situations, law enforcement can act quickly to prevent potential harm, even before a formal court hearing takes place. The court's ruling is intentionally narrow, applying only to emergencies involving documented psychiatric crises where there is clear evidence of danger. It does not give police blanket authority, but rather allows intervention in moments when immediate action is necessary to protect both the individual and the community. Chief Justice Roberts, writing for the court, emphasized that the Second Amendment's right to bear arms is not without limits. He pointed to historical precedent supporting the temporary disarmament of those who have been proven dangerous, provided that robust legal safeguards are in place to prevent abuse of this power. To protect due process, the justices highlighted the necessity of a prompt post-confiscation hearing, typically within 72 hours, so that individuals have a swift opportunity to challenge the removal of their firearms and present their case before a judge. Importantly, the decision makes clear that police authority is strictly tied to formal mental health holds, not to mere suspicion or unsubstantiated concerns. Officers must have official documentation and cannot act solely on a hunch. By grounding its ruling in clear legal standards and procedural safeguards, the Supreme Court aimed to strike a careful balance, protecting public safety in times of crisis, while also upholding the fundamental constitutional rights of all Americans. The Supreme Court's decision in Nevada v. Hayes is a careful balancing act. In mental health emergencies, public safety can temporarily outweigh an individual's right to keep firearms. The court recognized that immediate action may be necessary, but only if followed by a prompt, fair hearing. The government must quickly prove continued danger to justify holding the firearms. This ensures that emergency seizures are checked by judicial review, protecting individual rights. The ruling creates a 2-step process: temporary seizure in crisis, then swift court oversight. It's a pragmatic compromise, aimed at preventing tragedy without eroding constitutional protections. The ruling will reshape how police, courts, and citizens respond to mental health crises. Police now have clear authority to secure firearms during involuntary holds, reducing hesitation and legal risk. Courts must be ready to hold rapid hearings, ensuring due process is not delayed. For families, the decision offers a way to intervene before a crisis turns deadly. Gun owners, however, worry about potential abuse and the need for strict standards. The focus now shifts to implementation, training oversight, and vigilant protection of rights. The debate continues, but the rules of engagement have changed. The Supreme Court's decision in Nevada versus Hayes redraws the battle lines in America's gun debate. By allowing emergency confiscation during mental health crises, the court gives states a constitutional path for intervention. Yet the ruling is limited, leaving many questions for future cases and legislation. Citizens must stay engaged, ensuring new laws include strong due process protections. The real impact will depend on how these principles are enforced on the ground. Nevada versus Hayes is not a final answer, but a step toward balancing freedom and safety. The uneasy truce continues, as America seeks common ground in a deeply divided debate.